Now on Up North Live News at 6. 8 years ago, Brian Adams was burned over 85% of his body in a motel explosion. While he continues his healing journey, he's appealing a civil lawsuit involving police and mandatory reporting. State leaders are addressing funding shortages when it comes to school infrastructure needs. Also in Lansing, a controversial proposal to change Michigan's voting regulations takes center stage, where the plan stands tonight. And an act of kindness is growing into a community effort to help those in need. The third grader who wanted to make a difference and inspired others to do the same.
This is Up North Live News at 6 on 7 and 4.
It has been 8 years since an explosion at a Wexford County motel left then 13-year-old Brian Adams with severe burns. Adams, now in college, is appealing a decision by the Michigan Appeals Court in a civil lawsuit. Our Allie Baxter looked into the reasoning. She joins us now live from our content center. Allie, this lawsuit originally involved multiple people.
Yeah, Mark, when it first went to trial court in 2022, it named Adams' mother, the motel owners, the Wexford County prosecutor, and more in that civil suit. What Adams is challenging is the dismissal of the former Manton police chief from that suit, and he's appealing that decision to the state's highest court. A few days before an explosion fueled by butane gas caused severe burn injuries to a 13-year-old Brian Adams, Manton's former police chief Michael Long pulled Adams' mother over for a traffic stop and arrested her.
Leaving the children on the side of the road, rendering them no aid. Not calling a family member, not calling CPS.
According to court documents, Long then told her two sons in the car to walk back to the motel they came from, later bringing the brothers McDonald's. The brothers were alone for a week at the Green Mill Motel.
The child protection laws were put into place as a mandatory law to protect children. That's why police, firefighters, school teachers, reporters like yourself, and anyone who serves in a public capacity has a mandatory obligation to report suspected child abuse and neglect.
It's this incident and knowing that Adams' mother had drugs at the motel that led to Long's inclusion in a civil lawsuit filed by Brian. The lawsuit argued Long violated Michigan's child protection law. The law requires law enforcement officers report suspected child abuse or neglect.
This officer is not only responsible for being part of what happened to my son, and as much as I hate to say it, this officer also had the ability to save Amanda from making bad decisions.
Long argued he's entitled to governmental immunity. Long, the trial and appeals court, and a similar case argue that mandatory reporting doesn't override governmental immunity.
The man didn't follow his law. He doesn't get protections of immunity. Everyone's case that involves governmental immunity starts on third base. Oh, it's government. Bittner, just throw the case away. And that's not how the justice system is intended to be. You know, there's supposed to be equal protections underneath the law.
Robert says now it's not just about continuing to get justice for Brian, but advocating for those who could find themselves in the same position, which is why he's asking for the community's help, writing to the state Supreme Court and Attorney General's office.
It's been an emotional and mental nightmare fighting for Brian. You know, his medical needs, everything that he needs, he's striving to succeed. He's at Grand Valley State. He's doing good. But just because he's doing good and he's getting by, there's a lot of things he needs that aren't covered anymore.
The appeals court did note that to avoid the scenario detailed in the lawsuit, the legislature may want to amend the state's child protection law. Live in the Content Center, Allie Baxter, back to you.
Continuing our coverage tonight, the state has expanded its investigation into new areas of possible PFAS contamination in Wexford County. The Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy is offering free sampling of roughly 10 private wells in the East 34 Road area shown on this map. It comes as the Michigan PFAS Action Response Team conducted residential well sampling in the Cadillac area, along with residents sampling their own drinking water wells and revealing that numerous results were above Michigan's drinking water criteria for PFAS. And with the growing concern over PFAS in Wexford County, UpNorthLive has assembled a panel of people working on that problem for a Your Voice, Your Future town hall. It will be held on Wednesday, May 14th at 7 p.m. in the Cadillac High School auditorium. You can join us in person and be a part of this community discussion. It will also be streamed live on our UpNorthLive website and on all of our digital platforms. The event is free, and we hope to see you there.
Well, Michigan Department of Natural Resources will be lowering water levels at Big Creek Impoundment in Crawford County due to structural issues. The DNR says a routine inspection revealed a crack and movement in the dam. The 97-acre impoundment surrounded by state-managed land sits in the middle branch of Big Creek, a tributary of the north branch of the AuSable River. Officials plan to draw the water down about 17 feet back to the creek's original level, which allows the DNR and Eagle to fully assess the damage.
Because it's the control structure, you know, you can only see what's above the water line. We can't see what's below the water line and how extensive the damage might be.
The drawdown will occur gradually and is expected to conclude no later than October 1st as to not interfere with spawning trout in the stream below.
In state news now, Senate Democrats are proposing that more money be allocated to schools. Senate Bill 166 would add a little more than $1 billion to the school aid fund budget, raising the total in the 2026 budget to $21.8 billion. As Courtney Bennett reports, the funding will help address buildings that are aging and have been aging for quite some time.
A recent study from the School Finance Research Foundation evaluated Michigan schools and found most were in dire need of infrastructure upgrades.
We looked at 2,500 plus schools. 300 of them were over 75 years old.
And with buildings more than 7 decades old, things start to break down and fall apart. Stephen Ezekian is the executive director of the Research Foundation, and he says the problem is the state doesn't set aside dollars for these types of upgrades.
There is currently no dedicated money in the school funding in Michigan to address capital needs.
$350 million in the budget sounds like a hefty number. However, the state would only be investing less than 2% of what's needed.
The study speaks for itself. It identified $22.8 billion worth of need over the next 10 years. Half of that is in HVAC systems and roofs.
Typically what happens when schools need upgrades, districts go to voters.
Because those are based on property values, the ability of districts to raise money with bond issues is uneven across the state. So the same thing will happen, has been going on for years, is that districts will try to squeeze money out of their operational budget to patch the issues they have with their buildings, but not rebuild them.
During the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee this week, Senator Darren Camilleri says that the dollars would be provided to schools via grants.
It's going to prioritize roofing and HVAC, which is connected to the study that was done, and those are the two top needs of schools across Michigan.
This bill was passed in the subcommittee and moves on to the Senate committee. This bill was passed in the subcommittee and moves on to the Senate Committee on Appropriations. Ezekian says that this funding proposal dedicated to building upgrades is a step in the right direction.
We're supportive of what the Senate budget has in terms of looking at the study and taking a very small first step to address some of the needs that we identified. We're encouraged by the attention that it got in the legislature.
That was Courtney Bennett reporting. We're told Michigan Democrats are confident that they'll have the budget by July 1st.
A controversial proposal to change Michigan's voting regulations took center stage in Lansing today. House Resolution B would require Michigan voters to provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote and then photo ID to actually cast a ballot. It's a proposal that has strong support and strong opposition, and that was on display today. Changing Michigan law typically requires bills getting approval in the state House and the state Senate and then a signature by the governor. But this House Joint Resolution B, proposed by State Representative Brian Posthumus, isn't a change in law. It's a change in our state's constitution.
The only thing in place currently to stop a non-citizen from voting is a single checkbox asking someone if they are a citizen. People can and have lied during this process, allowing them to vote.
This would require voters to provide a passport, certified birth certificate, or verification from the Secretary of State when registering to vote, and a government-issued photo ID when actually casting a ballot.
What this House Joint Resolution does is it puts that in stone and says you must demonstrate your eligibility to vote when you first register.
Supporters say it could help secure Michigan's elections, making sure only U.S. citizens are casting ballots. Opponents say it unnecessarily restricts legal voters by creating obstacles and hurdles.
In short, we know from concrete trial and error that this type of policy not only doesn't do what it is intended for, but will actually bar U.S. citizens from exercising their freedom to vote. Additionally, this legislation will require Michiganders to pay money to produce documents in order to vote. That is a poll tax.
Other states have tried and passed similar measures, and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says, quote, in those states, it has either been overturned by the courts for being blatantly unconstitutional, created a separate and unequal system of voting access for citizens, or blocked tens of thousands of eligible voters from casting their legal ballot in an election, end quote. This is about changing what's required to vote in Michigan, and that's actually calling for a change to the state's constitution. In order to get to that, this would need a 2/3 vote in the state house and then a similar vote in the Senate. If approved, unlike a law that then would go to the governor, this would have to go to the voters statewide in the November 2026 general election. If a majority of voters then approve it, Michigan's constitution would get amended.
The clerk will close the board, tally display, and announce the vote.
But today, it failed to take that first step. The vote in the Michigan House failing to get the 66% needed, 58 ayes to 48 nays.
2/3 of the members elected and serving having not voted in favor. Therefore, the joint resolution is not adopted.
Amending the state's constitution can come from within the state house via legislative proposal like that, or it can originate by a resident-driven signature initiative petition. There's no word yet on what the next steps could be. A reminder for this look at news, sports, and weather, you can go to UpNorthLive.com.
A South Maple Elementary third grader is making a big difference. Hear what he's doing to help people in the community coming up.
A lot of rain today. Some of that will hang around at least through part of Friday. Look at that and the weekend forecast after the break.
I'm Jada Johnson from Big Boys TV, and the Fish and Game Report is sponsored by Johnson's Propane.